In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. Black business leaders say a Biden-Harris administration will be better for African Americans than a Trump-Pence administration. The Black Economic Alliance issued their first presidential endorsement since its founding in 2018. Joining us now is the executive director of the Black Economic Alliance, David Clunie. David, how you doing?
I'm well, Roland. How are you?
All right. So we talk about this particular endorsement here. Let's talk about economics. And that is Donald Trump makes the argument that he has done more for black people since Abraham Lincoln. We know that's absolutely false. I've heard some people say, hey, the tax cuts have been a boon to black businesses. So why is the Black Economic Alliance endorsing Biden-Harris over Trump-Pence?
So the Black Economic Alliance, a group of black business leaders, is endorsing Biden-Harris because we've been working with the campaign over the last few months. We've seen them beef up not only their campaign staff and hiring senior black folks like Simone Sanders, Karine Jean-Pierre, having Cedric Richmond, Congressman Cedric Richmond, the former chair of the CBC, Congressional Black Caucus, as their national campaign chair, but also in working with us and getting the input of other trusted black-led organizations and figuring out how their plans can be tailored to close the racial wealth gap. If we want to talk about the 2017 tax plan, let's talk about opportunity zones, for example. That program was meant to drive investment to underserved, disinvested communities, particularly communities of color. In fact, it is largely served as a boon to developers who were doing real estate deals in gentrifying neighborhoods already. There is a significant need for reform, and that's one of the many things that Joe Biden put out in his racial equity plan as the fourth pillar of his Build Back Better.
But if you talk to the Trump people, they say, hey, $75 billion has gone to these opportunity zones. I have been asking them for the data saying, show me how that actually has benefited African Americans. They can't do that. And so you're saying y'all analysis is that when he touts those opportunity zones, that has not been helpful to black folks.
Our point is the opportunity zones has the right purpose in trying to drive more investment to these communities. We're saying that the way it is structured is in need of reform because it does not apply enough restriction and specific requirements that make sure that the benefit goes to the community that are meant to benefit from this plan.
So beyond the economic zone, what opportunity zones, what else are you saying to African Americans, black business owners? Why a Biden-Harris administration will be better for black people economically than Trump-Pence?
Great question. So at the Black Economic Alliance, we focus on work, wages, and wealth. All three of those things are addressed in Joe Biden's economic plans. And like I said, we've worked very closely together, and we look forward to working together going forward at real significant systemic change. I think we have a landscape now politically where we could have groundbreaking legislation and significant reform, particularly led by people who look like us, and having perhaps the most diverse administration we've ever had, given the political climate. But specifically, things like small business support. He is giving public-private partnerships or supporting public-private partnerships in an effort to increase access to capital. The Paycheck Protection Program in general, that black business owners just do not have enough access to capital, particularly from the traditional banking system. He's talked about making a historic commitment to equalizing federal procurement, investing and boosting home ownership, particularly for communities of color and black folks. We know home ownership is the largest builder of wealth, world wealth, things in the United States over generations. And looking at retirement security, equity, infrastructure plan, that's thinking about how, both in your procurement, designing infrastructure plans, there's a specific plans on benefiting communities of color, second chance hiring. And as I talked about first, I think the political climate we have now, we have seen real recognition from the Biden-Harris campaign that they know we have a moment that we have to respond to. and that the only way to do that is to be bold in our ask, and also to put the right people in place, like Kamala Harris, who know the Black experience and know firsthand what's needed to really move on closing the wealth.
All right, then. David Clunie, we surely appreciate it. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Roland.
All right, my panels, Breonna Cartwright, political strategist, A. Scott Bolden, former chair, National Bar Association Political Action Committee, Robert Patillo, executive director of the Rainbow Push Coalition, Peachtree Street Project. Robert, I'll start with you. Let's talk economics here. And so, first of all, this is a group of Black business leaders. Donald Trump has tried to make the argument that he is the right person for the job, but also the Congressional Budget Office just dropped their new report showing that the federal deficit is now $3.3 trillion. It was $596 billion when Obama was president. Donald Trump has added $3.7 trillion to that. And so those tax cuts that he touts, and I've heard black business owners, Black men say, oh, that's been a boon to us, but the Black worker has not necessarily said the same thing.
Well, in large part, we have to think about the fact that much of this is performative, the nature of the reforms of Trump. As in, when we talk about the low unemployment rate, it was all built off of the national credit card. We're going to cut taxes at the same time as increasing spending. We're going to not articulate any plan to pay this money back. And then when anything happens to knock us off that razor's edge, we saw the entire economy collapse, and now nearly 60 million people filing unemployment claims. We have to have a sound economic and fiscal policy that is actually sustainable. No one believes that our current economic system is sustainable or something that can grow. And just as Trump talks much about the opportunity zones of what they've done for the Black community, what we have not, he also in the same breath talks about the fact that so many Black communities are in poverty, that they have not improved. We see the commercials and ads from many Black Republicans talking about the despotic hellscapes of Black communities around the country, but with no plan or articulation on how they exactly are going to fix it. So people have to get out of the performative nature of public policy and dig down and ask for the dollar and cents numbers on what needs to be done to ensure that we have the economic prosperity that's been promised by this administration and others before it.
When you look, Breonna, when you look at this, again, they are making a financial decision here, the Black Economic Alliance. And so what kind of impact do you think it could have in speaking to Black voters? Donald Trump has made it clear this administration wants to target Black men specifically. They think they can get 20% of Black men voting for Donald Trump. How do they make the argument that, you know what, it actually Trump-Pence has not been a boon to Black people economically?
Right. I think that it's very important that the Black Economic Alliance endorsed BidenHarris. And Trump has been horrible for Black businesses. The coronavirus outbreak has been extremely tough for Black businesses. Even with the PPP and the economic injury disaster loan, programs in Black businesses have had a more difficult time getting these federal relief programs. An example would be in D.C. at Finch Chili's Bowl. And so it's been an iconic place for Black people in D.C. for over 60 years, and they almost didn't survive because of the wait time for the PPP loan. They were so strapped for cash, they closed all locations except one. And so that shows you how Trump hasn't been good for Black businesses.
Scott, go ahead.
Yeah. You know what I really like about BEA, and pardon me?
Go ahead. You're live. Go ahead.
What I like about BEA is, and I'm a big contributor to theirs, is that they have not only corporate dollars, but sizable wealth of its Black members and board members, and they give money to those who are going to give and invest and select Democratic candidates or even Republican candidates who are going to fulfill their economic agenda, their economic empowerment. There's no other organization like it. Secondly, the problem with Donald Trump, and even when he talks about lower Black unemployment, the problem with him is that he has no targeted urban agenda to not only empower Black people, but let alone Black businesses. If you look at the unemployment that went down to 3, 4, 5%, well, white unemployment went down and so did Black unemployment, but the gap between Black and whites unemployment numbers never changed, which means he did nothing to close the gap. because he hasn't targeted them as part of his urban agenda, let alone implemented or invested anything in closing that gap, because he's not interested. Those two things have to happen under Biden-Harris. And what BEA is saying is it is more likely that they can keep Biden-Harris accountable in directing Black economic empowerment, not only in the urban centers, but all across the country. We'll have to see.
Look, the bottom line is Trump is going to try to make an economic argument to African Americans, especially Black men. Robert.
But he can't, though. He can't.
Well,
You're right, but he can't.
No, but here's the deal, though. Scott. The Quinnipiac, their poll came out today. It is showing 11% Black support. He got 8% in 2016. Again, Robert, the Trump campaign, I've heard it from this White House directly. They believe they got 13% of the Black male vote. They believe that they can push that to 18 to 20%. So how does Biden-Harris? I get all of the attention folks had on Black women, but the reality is this here. The New York Times had a story the other day. You cannot repeat the Obama winning coalition without Black men. Robert, what must Biden-Harris say specifically to Black men to get their votes in November?
Well, one, they have to articulate a message that actually benefits the African-American male. Quite frankly, what Donald Trump has done is do a very good job of appealing to men in the campaign generally, and then specifically to Black men. I can name more Black male surrogates for Donald Trump than I can now name Black male surrogates for Joe Biden. When you see interviews of Black conservatives, you have Bruce Lavelle, you have Paris Denard, you have Deontay Johnson, you have Malik. I can rattle them off. I don't know a Black man who is speaking on the side of Joe Biden on a regular basis besides Cory Booker. I also think that the first thing that Democrats now can no longer just be criminal justice reform when we talk about the needs of African-American men. Not all of us are criminals. Not all of us, that's our first agenda item. And quite frankly, they have to make sure that they're articulating this in a way that is that we can actually repeat and that we can hold them accountable for, instead of simply going to the old tropes. They've just launched the the Shop Talk series with the Biden-Harris campaign, so they are making some efforts to reach out. But I do think that you can't just try to ride the Black girl magic train across the finish line. You're going to have to reach out to brothers. And when you go to barber shops, when you go to the grocery store, when you go to your fraternity, when you go to play basketball, whatever you're doing, not many people, Black men, are super excited about the Biden campaign. I think they have about 30 days to fix that.
But Roland, they're not excited about it, because Biden-Harris aren't talking to them about it. They're talking at them. That's first of all. Second of all, I got to tell you, I think I may have told you this story. In 2016, the janitor in my building said to me after Trump won on election night, he said, "I voted for Trump." I said, "Are you nuts?" He said, "Nope, I'm not nuts." And then he told me, he said, "I'm pushing this broom because an illegal immigrant came in and took my construction job. And the only person that's speaking to that, because I'm still pushing this broom, is Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton never spoke to me about that, or at least I wasn't convinced that she was talking to Black men about that. And I lost my job." In that narrative that he shared with me was not only eye-opening, but I tell you what, Biden and Harris better address and talk to Black men about that issue and other issues that are affecting them and their ability to provide for their families, as well as to be economically empowered based on voting for them. I haven't heard that yet, but that's where that 11 to 13% is coming from, of Black men who supported the Trump ticket.
Well, I'll tell you, Breonna, first
rightfully
of all,
or wrongfully, by
here's
the
the
way.
deal.
Rightfully or wrongfully.
You absolutely have to have surrogates out there talk about those issues. And look, and I hear your point, Robert, but the reality is Congressman Cedric Richmond has been out there, Congressman Jim Clyburn. But you also have to go outside, Breonna, of members of Congress. You've got to go to individuals who are business owners, individuals who are out here, who can talk a narrative, who can also speak speak to those issues. Robert is right. I mean, here's the deal: there are a bunch of us who never been involved in the criminal justice system. So so you can't say criminal justice, mass incarceration, think you're just talking to black men. No, you have to articulate a much broader message. And that, again, that's what they're going to have to figure out. And they got to get it done because Joe Biden cannot afford slippage. He has to be able to have the kind of coalition that's actually going to achieve it. Brianna, go ahead.
Yes, I totally agree that it can't just be Congress members. However, there is Black caucus men who are helping within this. Specifically, he has 300 Black ministers nationally that's helping propel the message and being surrogates. And so I think it comes in different aspects within our community. And I, as we talked about for businesses, but through the church, I do think that there is a heavy target on Black women, as we've seen, and we love Kamala, and it makes sense in itself that the past few weeks, Joe Biden has put Kamala Harris out in front in terms of messaging and what a Democratic White House will do in regard to economic policy, small businesses, and jobs. And so I think concentrating on the labor aspect of our nation and how we can get it better will really drive home a lot of the issues that we're seeing, as a Black man or as a Black woman. And there are definitely surrogates, but we see that he's targeting Black men by pardoning, just the way that he targeted immigrants by doing the citizenship randomly during the RNC, which I don't know what it had to do with anything. So, if people are going to take the symbolic gestures to go over there, that's kind of like hard to fight. But I think people are looking for more than just symbols and they want action. And the last 4 years have shown how he does not help Black America.
I got you.
And I think that's very important.
But Roland, real quick,
I do think that immigration issue when it comes to Black men.
Robert, go ahead. Well, actually, the immigration issue is a big issue with Black men. I can tell you that going back to when I did. Look, I can go back to 2008 when I had my radio show on WVON when that issue came up. How that was a major issue with the callers. But Robert, go ahead.
Well, I think one of the things that's important is there is no current Biden elevator pitch to Black men. That if I was to say, distill down what Joe Biden's going to do for African-American men in a 30-second pitch, most people can't. I think until the Democratic Party is able to articulate something along those lines, it's going to be very difficult to not have Donald Trump get that 20% of the Black vote. Because even if it's disingenuous, a lie will travel halfway around the world before the truth can put on its pants. And they just keep hammering unemployment, First Step Act, opportunity zones, and then roll out the Black surrogates. That is enough to get you over 20% unless there's a strong counterpunch from the Democratic Party.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young Black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov.